Oh, look at that lonely Brussels sprout. And traditionally what people do when they're cooking them is they'll probably just kind of cut the end off and then they'll slice it in half, and then maybe they'll do that again in quarters and they'll try and cook it. But part of the problem is it's very hard to get it, you know, tender, right? Because these, just like cauliflower, have these little hearts in them, which, although fully edible and tasty, are a little tough. And what we're going to do is actually cut the hearts out. And just warning to everybody watching this that it is labor intensive, because what we're trying to do is separate the Brussels sprout into its individual leaves. You can see how those are all falling apart now once you take the heart out. There we go. That's usually what I keep there. Maybe get one more here. There you go. And again, this piece here, once it starts to look like this, that's going in compost, or you can save them and just do them in the traditional way afterwards. But that's step number one, people. You want to make sure that you get your Brussels sprouts leave, just like you're peeling them off lettuce once you get them done that way. So a little more later, after we cut up about 25 of these and do some seasoning. Well, it feels like I've been at this for about 20 minutes, but it was probably only about 15. And little music in the background. My preference for cooking is Dave Matthews, but you do you. But you can see here now that we have all of these lovely Brussels sprouts. All of the leaves are separated, and again, we're just cutting the heart out and then taking our time peeling those leaves out. It almost looks like lettuce right now. But now that it's done, we are ready to cook. And yes, I know it takes time, and if you don't like taking your time, I'm sure you have a perfectly fine box of KD in the cupboard, and hats off to you. But today, alright gang, you don't have to be an expert to realize that this is a cast iron pan, but I cannot tell you how much more awesome cooking with cast iron is. I got this at a garage sale many years ago for $15, and I have used it so many times I can't even tell you. And in my hand here now, what I've got is, and it looks a little weird, but this is beef tallow, and I'm going to be cooking some bacon with this beef tallow. And I always try and use this. I do cook briskets. I'll do a video on one of my cooks sometime. And when you trim a brisket, you get a lot of really nice, beautiful fat out of it, which is excellent for cooking. So all I do, I'll just show you quickly, is I freeze it. Once I render it, put it in the bag, and that is good for practically forever. And I pull what I need out. Okay gang, bacon is in, and I'm not going to bore you with cutting bacon, because I'm sure you can do that, but I've actually got it pre-cubed before I actually put it in here, because I want this fat. And these Brussels sprouts are made much more delicious by the bacon fat and the beef tallow. So we're just going to cook these down probably for about 6 or 7 minutes, probably not much longer. I'm at a medium to medium high heat, and just make sure you're stirring frequently, because it does like to stick. And we'll come back. I'll give you a little time with the bacon though first. Bacon. Alright, of course we're not just doing Brussels sprouts, but they do look mighty fine. As does our bacon, which is almost finished. I got it down on low heat now. Just trying to caramelize it a bit without actually getting it to a burning point on the oil, so looking pretty good. But these guys right here, they're beautiful pork chops. Got them from a butcher in Niagara Falls. Notice all the fat content in there. You want that because this will render down in the smoking process to be a beautiful thing. And this was marinated for 24 hours. Basically, I do salt, a little bit of sugar, not too much because I'm on a keto diet right now, with some jerk seasoning and some full pepper. And once that's done, you'll never do pork the same way again. Always marinate. I would say the same thing for chicken now as well. And we're gonna get these on the smoker right now. All right gang, here we are. The smoker is good to go. You can see we got some nice smoke coming out there. And I'm gonna throw these bad boys on right now. And the wood that I'm using today is actually hickory. For pork and chicken, I generally use a lot of either apple or cherry, but I want a little bit of a stronger flavor, so I'm going to go with some hickory on these today. So I'm going to shut this down, and just remember to open up the lid just ever so slightly, probably like about that, make sure we get some airflow. The idea here is I'm not cooking right now, I'm just smoking, and I will come back because we're gonna grill these things once they're done. So let's let the Komodo do its job. Well, the smoker is definitely smoking, so we're just gonna check in on these pork chops that we got in there earlier just to see how we're doing. And you see how I pumped the lid there? If you're ever using one of these things, do that, don't just lift it straight up. Oh, and looking nice. And all we're really trying to do right now is get some flavor. That smoke flavor into these pork chops. We're not cooking. This is literally just adding some seasoning. I'm gonna flip those over. Oh yeah, looking good. Let them smoke on the other side. Oops, excuse my finger. Okay. Let's give these probably another 20 minutes and then we'll start to grill them. All right, lest we forget an important ingredient. This is a shallot, looks like a red onion, but it's actually way better. And these little guys, we're just gonna dice up. And I won't bore you with all the onions, but we're gonna do probably 2 of these. Hopefully we got some focus. And the way I'm getting it right now is about as much as you need, really, because we're gonna combine this with the bacon that we cooked earlier, and we'll come back to that. So if you don't have shallots in your roster, you better get some. We have 4. All right, onions are in, and you'll notice I actually removed the bacon, which is not full now because that's cooked as much as I want it to be cooked. But that flavor from the bacon and the beef tallow is now coming into these onions. And I'm not going to cook these long, probably just a couple of minutes just to soften them up. And once those are done, I'm going to turn off the heat actually, and I know it seems really slow, but I still have those pork chops smoking out there, and I want to wait to get this ready at the very end, because with any meat you're cooking, you actually want to kind of let it sit for 10 or 15 minutes at a minimum to let those juices kind of absorb back in. So I always like to do the vegetables last, but as you can see, there's a few steps in this, so we make sure that we get many of the steps out of the way early on during the cook while everything is smoking, so that we don't feel rushed. And that's a thing I think people miss when they're cooking, is they try and do everything all at the same time, and that's never a pleasurable experience. If you want to enjoy cooking, you need to make sure that you take your time with it and start thinking about the steps that you can do ahead of time to be able to make the experience, better. So there we go. Hey gang, I'm back. Just a quick note on charcoal. So I always use lump charcoal, and unlike the little briquettes that you can buy, which are held together with starches and other kind of things to hold them together, right? It's just 100% charcoal, and I think that's really important. So I don't use lighter fluid, I only use lump charcoal, and if you really want a good cook, I think you should too. Hey gang, welcome back. We are no longer in smoke mode, we are in grill mode. So these were smoking for probably about an hour, hour and a half. As you can see here, they're starting to get some nice color from the grill here. Thing is with pork, I mean, you can't just smoke it. Chicken's the same way, I find. What you actually have to do is make sure you smoke it and grill it so you get some of that nice char, that nice color. And we'll let these go until the temperature reaches 165. So the thermometer I use is actually an Inkbird. You can get it on Amazon. It's fairly inexpensive. I actually did have a Napoleon earlier, and the thing died and crapped out like soon after I bought it. So this Inkbird one though, I know it's probably from China, and I know some people don't like that, but it has been excellent. So let's just let these grill now. Once they're done, we'll pull them off and we'll get back to the Brussels sprouts. Hey gang, like I said, we gotta let meat rest, right? So pork chops aren't any different, and you can see they've been sitting here for about 10 minutes. Some of the juices are starting to come out, but when you let it rest, most of those juices actually start to reabsorb back into the protein fibers of the meat. So 10-15 minutes, depending on what you're doing. With steak, sometimes if it's a nice ribeye, medium rare, I'll do 20 minutes, but pork chops, less time, because they're cooked up to about 165 degrees. And we are almost ready to plate. It's not going to take that long to cook these things. You know, probably 5 or 6 minutes maximum. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of on a keto diet right now, trying to make less of less, losing a little bit of weight. So instead of sugar, one of the things that I like to use, you can use maple syrup or brown sugar or whatever you want later in the cooking process, but just wanted to show you this Mirin sweet cooking rice wine. So it's got a lot less calories and carbs than just using pure sugar. And for this kind of dish, it's actually quite beautiful. So more on that later as we mix everything in. All right, everybody, here we are. We got the Brussels sprout leaves in, as I mentioned earlier. Just look how beautiful those look getting glazed in that bacon fat and the beef tallow. And I'm telling you, you do them this way, you'll never use olive oil again. Not for this kind of thing, because they have higher smoke points, so you can cook them a little hotter. And again, we're just going for a saute here. So what I'm going to do now is throw in our bacon and onion, which we did earlier, or the shallots, I should say, not the onion. Our secret ingredient, which I shared a bit earlier too, if you can't use sugar or maple syrup because you, like me, are on a kind of a keto, full of yourself diet, then you can get a little bit of sweetness in here without the added sugar. And it's funny, I didn't say this earlier, but if you actually taste the mirin sauce before you use it to cook, it almost tastes like ice wine. It's actually got that kind of profile. Here we go. So we're just putting a little bit of that mirin in, probably 1 or 2 tablespoons. Listen to that. And we'll continue to stir fry. That's all we're doing here, is just, again, trying to soften these leaves up. Unlike a traditional Brussels sprout where you have to boil it, or because it's so thick, really cook it through, this is a much milder way to cook it. And a lot of people don't realize this, but Brussels sprouts give off sulfur. And if you remember those Brussels sprouts you hated when you were a kid, I got news for you folks, that was the sulfur coming out of it because it was overcooked, right? So look at this. I got beautiful green color coming in here now. I got the bacon mixed in. I got the mirin for a little sweetness. I am not going to do anything else to this. I'm not going to over season that. So all I'm going to do now, again, just after a few minutes, maybe 4 minutes of cooking, it's time to turn that off, let it sit, and get ready to have supper. Hey gang, we are plated up and ready to go, and look at just how beautiful that looks, eh? We just got some nice barbecue score marks on that pork, then up to 165. And you can see these Brussels sprouts. Look at that beautiful color. They're so deep green. And with that bacon and the mirin sauce and a little bit of shallot, I didn't even add salt and pepper. I might put a little pepper on everything now, but that's it. Beautiful dinner, and it is a slow cook. Again, if you want fast cooking, there's probably KD in your cupboard, but if you want to have something that's absolutely delicious and will surprise you and anyone else you're cooking for, can't go wrong here. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. Keep cooking.